So, in terms of the world of gaming, which is primarily focused on money, and obviously the games that have the biggest money behind them make the most money, I think 2023 may be the single most disappointing year for AAA games in quite some time. In
I
terms of
know,
just
right?
having the
So far.
most games that are just like, like they give me the feeling of,
Yeah,
So,
it's weird, isn't it? It's like
it's
it's been a
odd.
year it's been a year where the remakes and stuff have been really good overall.
Yeah.
Like every
Dead
time they've done a
Space,
remake,
Resi,
Dead Space,
Metroid.
Resident Evil, yeah, all Red Metroid, all of those remakes have been really, really good. And they've done well in terms of commerce and stuff. They've done good numbers and all that. But whenever the seems to have not been good, to say the least. Like Forspoken, terrible game, absolutely woeful.
I forgot that came out this year.
Yeah, it came out this year and like died immediately. It literally died immediately because didn't something else come out like a week after that, and everybody stopped talking about Forspoken immediately because the other
I
game
should be
that
able to
came
tell you.
out. Sorry,
I wouldn't be able to. I'm going to look it up. Hold on.
It
yeah,
came
look it
Forspoken
up
out
because
in
release.
January. What came out in January, which would have been like really, really good at the end of January.
something came out really soon afterwards, and just everybody stopped talking about Forspoken immediately.
I'm looking at it right now.
I can't remember what it is,
Um,
but yeah, so that was hugely disappointing. And then obviously last week, as we record this podcast, Redfall came out and it was hugely disappointing despite being a new game from a AAA publisher and all of that. It's just been a year where the new stuff from the industry at that top end has been very disappointing.
oh, it was Dead Space.
It was Dead Space. There you go. Dead Space came out and
It was
everybody
Dead
forgot about
Space.
Forspoken immediately.
Yeah.
That was really
I like
fun. Yeah, Dead
I
Space
like
is
this
great.
Google search I did. It's like Forspoken shit, and it's like in the news section. One of the let's like highlight some of these great titles. Poor Redfall reviews have Forspoken trending on social media. Like that can only be bad. And then why Dying Light 2 should more be like Forspoken and less like The Last of Us. Both really shit games.
I don't think they're shit games. They're fine. You
Well,
know,
that was
that's it.
another
That
one. Dying Light was only okay.
was like
Only
people who I
okay.
knew were
Like,
enjoying it were having fun with it.
yeah, but everybody has agreed that it's not exactly. No, sorry, not Dying Light. Dead Island 2. Um,
Hmm.
everybody was like, "Oh, it's okay.
I
Like,
liked Dead
it's
Island,
okay.
and I'm
It's not
hyped for Dead
exactly.
Island 3.
It's not exactly setting people's world on fire either. You know, it's
I mean, it's a 2011 game that came out in 2023. So
yeah,
whatever. I don't. The
and
thing
it.
is, I don't even consider Dead Island as a AAA game at this point, just because
Well, I
it
mean,
it
speaking of
came
that, I
out 10
mean,
years ago.
the Star Wars game. Everybody's
Mm,
talking about how they're playing the Star War, but it's just okay. You know, it's not like setting people's worlds on fire. It's not blowing their mind. We're halfway through the year and we haven't had a new game from a major publisher that has really impressed
is
me.
good.
Yeah.
That's why it's insane to me that we've had a year where the highest reviewed original game is the Xenoblade DLC.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's got
I mean, that
91 and
doesn't
it's the
surprise me,
highest
but
reviewed.
yeah.
It's probably really, really good. I haven't played it yet because I'm waiting to stream it. But oh baby, oh baby, Xenoblade has never let me down,
Yeah, but yeah,
except for two.
that's DLC, right? It's yeah,
Yeah,
it, it's
yeah,
been
which is a shame again.
it's not like we've had bad games because not only have there been the remakes, of course, but there's stuff like Age of Wonders, which I'm really enjoying at the moment. That came out, but that's not a AAA game, right? Um,
Absolutely not.
there's there have been games, and they've been all right or entertaining and stuff, but yeah, it's just been one of those years where I it hasn't been a very good year for games, and that's because the new stuff from the big publishers have been pretty poor overall.
Oh, I mean, the thing is that like at this point, I was more excited to play a remake of a game from 2005 than I was excited to play literally anything else coming out this year, except for like 16, FF16. That's it. And that's a bit of a shame because that shouldn't be the case. It should be new
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean,
And I think that's where it comes into the fact that like the indies and the double A's are kind of nailing it this year. Like, not to
yes,
again go back to tape, but I'm really excited about tape to tape because I think the game has so much potential to be amazing. And then even stuff like what was the Greedfall developers game, the weird French Revolution
that was last year.
mechanical game? That was
That was
last year.
last
Oh
year.
darn,
Still,
sorry.
still rising.
That
But
game's cool.
I now because they put it aside.
Yeah,
And yeah, they didn't play it when it was new because it came out like a week after Elden Ring, which was a stupid time to release a
it's the
Souls-like.
dumbest idea.
Yeah, but they did, and yeah, people put it aside and only started to rediscover it now. But yeah, there have been a lot of good games released this year, but it has been those indies, and it has been the remakes as well that have kind of held the baton for quality video games.
It's shocking to me because like again, it's a case of me thinking the best game of this year is actually a game from 10 years ago. Like
Yeah,
I've
Resident
played
Evil
through all the
4.
big three remakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
15
we've
years ago.
had
It's
years
insane.
where it's basically been like it's okay to not play a video game this year before. Like, I think the year before the Switch, Nintendo's output, that was like everyone's output was relatively that year. Like, it's happened before.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like remakes and stuff though when it came out. You know what I mean? Like it's not just a case of, one game not being particularly great. And then that's it. All the good games this year are games that we've played before.
With one exception, I just
It's
realized I'm looking through the list now as we're talking, and there is one exception, and that's Wolong, which was an absolutely
How long
spectacular game.
I've been playing that in co-op with my friend, and oh baby, that game is fun when it wants to be, and then horrible when it wants to be.
Yeah, it has its moments where it kind of dies, but overall, I
The
think
online
it's a
is
very hard.
barely functioning.
Well, that's a
It's
different
very
aspect.
sad.
But if you play the single player, once you get through that initial boss, um, it's great overall. But yeah, other than that,
It's a
I
really
can't
fun
think.
game.
Yeah,
I mean,
I guess the
even
question is
in terms of
why.
shooters, we've got Counter-Strike 2, and that's it. That's all I'm thinking about that I'm excited about in terms of an actual shooter game that's coming out. And it's just Counter-Strike again. They're not really making that many changes apart from like
What,
smoke physics.
what are you talking about? There was Atomic Heart. That's a shooter for you.
You're saying that was good?
I'm
Like
saying it
actually,
happened.
it
I'm saying that
did
happened.
happen. No, no, you're so true. It did happen. I'm being a fool. Everyone go play
um,
Atomic Heart, a game which has big step on me mummies.
I guess the question
Yeah.
is I mean, why may have this happened? What's the cause of games not being that great this year?
It's
And
just safer to release the same thing over and over again.
well, I would say that
Which
it's a combination of things, I reckon. Firstly, there's still the residual effect because for a number of years, game developers weren't able to work as normal. A lot of the stuff they did in preparation for games that would have been released, this year, next year, were compromised. Like a lot of the fundamental work that would have gone into, say, Redfall, would have happened through the COVID time,
mm,
and that would have been very difficult to kind of coordinate and work on. So a lot of people thought, well, a lot of people through COVID had so many great games to play, right? And that was
yeah,
because
we got
those
pretty
games were
lucky.
in develop before COVID, right? So what we are now experiencing is the result of the COVID disruption to the video game industry. And that'll probably go for another year or two, where we'll have all kinds of issues with games, bugs, and messy stuff with games at launch that they'll need to fix via patches and stuff. So that's one of the reasons The other reason is I reckon the economics of the games industry is just changing rapidly. So those AAA games aren't really as viable anymore in the same way as they used to be. So developers
It's
are
too
trying
big
to,
to
or
fail.
developers and publishers are trying to figure out how to make it all happen or work in an era where people are not paying for full price for a game. People are expecting it to be on Game Pass. Redfall, for example, once again, Redfall is a good example of this. That game was designed to be released on Game Pass, and that meant that how they went about making it needed to change to make it economically viable. And the those kinds of things take time for developers to figure out how to make it work in a way that's still entertaining and stuff. So yeah, there's huge transitions going through the industry at the moment as well, which is affecting the quality of those games at that very top end. Not mid-tier games, because they're still working to traditional models of how they're sold, and they're a little bit immune, I guess, to the trends of the broad industry because they're targeting a niche audience rather than the mainstream. But yeah,
I mean,
at that very
to
big
sort of
AAA space, it's just a
think
mess.
about that a little bit more. I mean, indie games and AA games, they aren't vying for every second of your time. Because the issue that we're facing right now is that every big AAA game is asking you to spend hours every day playing it, doing the battle pass, doing the unlocks, doing the daily challenges. There's only so much time in the day for every single person. And to be honest with you, no one is going to be like, I can't wait to do my daily challenges in Redfall today, when a game like Fortnite does have just a better loop and has more people playing to a variety of people. No one's going to care about it. There's not enough time to care about it in the day. So things like indie games where they're just sort of like, all right, it's a game that lasts like 8 hours. Have fun with it. Things like Dead Space, where it's a game that lasts like 20 hours, looks great, plays great, is great. It's done. It's over when you
Well,
finish
that's
it, but you can go back and play it again. It's great. That's why it's successful, and that's why Resi 4 is successful, and that's why Metroid Prime is successful, because they're all just contained games that are great experiences that aren't wasting your time. And
that's the
so many of
thing.
these games are
Those
designed to
games,
waste and take your time.
yeah, those games were all made before this new approach to game design became a thing, right? So
Absolutely.
Resident Evil 4, the original, came out at a time where people just bought a game and played it for 10 hours and then moved on to the next game. It was just that's how you did things. Um, and that was when you remake it, there's only so much you can do. Developers are forced to developers are limited in terms of what they can do to modernize those games in a way that will still resonate with audiences. And as a result, we have a better quality game from them because they can't turn Resident Evil 4 into a live service game, then they don't. And that's a good thing.
Exactly.
Whereas you're totally right. All of these games that are being made today, they're being made with the explicit approach that they want to make them live service games that do last forever. You keep playing them because they need to be on Game Pass, and the way that you make money on Game Pass is to have 100 hours per user. And how do you get to that 100 hours per user? You just have all this kind of content that doesn't really do anything. And for me, I have played Redfall for like an hour or so, and I'm already deathly bored with it because I can tell that there's
Oh,
no
it's
substance to
miserable.
I can tell that
It's
there's no
utterly
substance to
miserable.
it. And the reason there's no substance to it is because if they tried to put substance in there, then the game would be much shorter. By making this really shallow thing that's designed to be endlessly replayed, that's how they get their audience to have, to put 100 hours each into the thing. But for
Yeah.
those of us that have a sense of self-respect and would rather play something that has some kind of meaning, then yeah, it's not there. So
It's
that's,
I think
I
what
frustrating.
we're
guess.
also seeing is a lot of those live service games. They're sort of like had you had the NFTs and Bitcoin and
Bloody
on the
Ubisoft.
yeah, and on the blockchain and all this other crap, which sort of started coming in as big trends. And then, that was sort of in the development pipeline for a lot of these AAA games. And then when there was a good chunk, I mean, they're still going to happen. They're still going to be in the pipeline for a few, but a good chunk of them are like, hang on a minute, we're going to backtrack a bit and get them out of the games or retool it a bit. And then so you've got all these games which are a little bit of a mess because it's like, well, we spent time working on this and now we've got, nothing which was focused on for the actual end product.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there, Trenda. There is probably an element of that some developers and publishers were working on ideas that, especially particularly with NFTs, were not popular. So they did have to backtrack
Because
about a bit.
the idea then would be like not how we can make a good game and make money from the good game. It's then we're going to make money and then make a good game.
Well, I think
It's
that's
like the
generally
reverse.
I think that's the problem with the AAA industry as a general thing these days, that it is
Yeah.
definitely like the conversation that they're having in the development offices, especially amongst the suits, the project managers, the CEOs, the
Shareholders.
well, not so much the shareholder. I'm talking about the people making the games, but the conversations that the people
Oh, right.
making the games are having is very much about how can we maximize our revenue. What kind of the metrics they're looking at is number of hours played per user or engagement statistics. They're so busy collecting data and looking at these kind of metrics that along the lines just making a fun game has kind of been lost. And I don't think that's a consideration of the AAA industry, which is, again, another reason that the remakes are kind of working, because the remakes were always made with the idea of making a game, and not succeeding according to the best practice or the business metrics that they're looking at. So I think that's a big part of it as well. The attitude
Yeah.
towards what they're trying to do with games has changed fundamentally. They're all about engagement models now. They're products, and they've always
How
been
can we
products, of
keep them
course.
playing in that cycle?
Yeah, it's just metrics, like the the idea of what a good game is to the game developers, the publishers, the games that have the greatest engagement. It's not about making a game that people enjoy. It's about making a game that people spend a lot of time playing. And they're very
Yeah.
different things. They're very, very different things, because mobile games, this is basically they saw the success of mobile games and have been trying to replicate that in the console and PC space. But mobile games aren't necessarily about people having fun. It's about people playing a lot. And they're very different. Like, it's gambling. And I've said this, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I've said this on the podcast in the past. I once went along to a gambling conference that I got invited to as a journalist. And um, I didn't have to go. I don't cover that industry, but at a random thing, the PR invited me along. So I thought I'll go and see what it's like and see what that industry is about. And the conversations they have, the way they talk about games or what they're doing, is exactly the way they talk about video games now. And this was 15 years ago when I went to the gambling conference. But the conversations, the tone, the language they use, the way they talk about games in the gambling industry and the way they talk about games in video games is exactly the same now. So it's not just about loot boxes. When people say that gambling has had an influence on video games, it's not just about the loot boxes. It's the way they think about their games, and that's a huge problem for the AAA industry. And I think that if they don't get control of themselves, if somebody doesn't wake them up to this, then that issue's not going to go away either. We're just
Isn't that
always
just
going to have bad
horribly
AAA
sad?
games. Yeah, it's pathetic. It's
Who'd have
it's
thought
really
that Jack
pathetic.
Thompson was right? We should have banned all video games.
Yeah. Probably. I don't know, like the way that we're going right now, the only games I'm interested in from a AAA point of view are the games where it's very explicitly clear that this is a single player game. Like I love Xenoblade 3. It's a RPG that I streamed the entire way through, had a great time, loved it. Perfect gaming experience, in my opinion. Got very happy with it, got very mad at it, loved it. Great time. Played through Dead Space, did the exact same thing, had a great time with it, didn't waste my time on anything else. I'm playing through Metroid right now. It's a great time. I'm playing through Diablo 2 right now again as well, from before the Blizzard absolute nightmare. And the game's also fantastic. It's so sad that that's just not the case for new games anymore, unless you're Capcom at this point. But even then, Capcom is a bit like, ooh, because sometimes they make bad choices.
Well, I mean,
But
you can pretty much rely on Zelda being a good game.
yeah, that's another thing. Is like Zelda will be fine, and it'll be
I
great,
don't think
and I'll have a great time with it.
I don't think there's any risk of that not being at least on some level decent. But yeah, you're right. I mean, because single player, the approach to game design is kind of constrained in terms of what you can do in making it a live service and so on, so on, and so forth. So developers are kind of forced to approach those games in a traditional way, as such. That the other thing about single player games, which I think is part of the reason that they're enjoyable, is they end. Because you do have a narrative in those. You have to have a
Not
narrative.
shit.
Yeah, you have to have a narrative in a single player game, which means that you have to have that beginning, middle, and end. It has to finish at some point. And when you approach games like, again, Redfall, um, they're made to be so open-ended. They're not. They don't effectively end, and that changes how they're made and changes it for the worst. Now, that doesn't mean that single player games are always good, because sometimes the story sucks, as Forspoken showed us. But it does mean that you have to approach it in a way that is conducive to a interesting game to play. So for the same reason as you, I mean, I only play single player games these days. I don't touch multiplayer unless I absolutely have to.
I think this is a bit of a moment for me to implore everyone who has not played Redfall, if you do have access to Game Pass, please give it a shot, because it sort of exemplifies everything we're talking about here. It is soulless. It is miserable. If you're playing on PC, it also runs maybe the worst I've seen a PC game run in a quite while, which is amazing given that Jedi Survivor came out like the other week. Um, the characters are awful. The story doesn't exist. The AI of the enemies means that you're basically playing the shooting gallery from RE4, but with worse music. The world design is empty. There's nothing there. It is running around an Unreal Engine like stock map with enemies that aren't a threat for however many hours it takes to beat that game. I don't even want to try it. I downloaded it, played it on release because I was excited about it, and I stopped within an hour because it just was awful. It was terrible. So there's something to be said about like a study that needs to be done about that game and why it doesn't work, because it's so endemic of every marketing manager's like feedback points. Like, how can you be diverse but also not? How can you have an open world but also not? How can you have fun enemies but also not? Like, not too fun, so people are gonna get freaked out by it and think it's kooky and crazy. Like, it's so frustrating. It's such a marketer's game, and I think that's why it annoys me.
Well, that's the thing. It's all made for the metrics.
Yeah.
um,
It's
it's
got the
made
Blizzard
for
the Blizzard
it's made
diversity tool to show
it's
how
it's
everyone is
made
diverse.
it's made by
So sad.
a Microsoft company, and Microsoft's goal is to push Game Pass and not box sales. Game Pass. That's what Microsoft wants people playing. And I've said it so many times over the podcast and every other way and anywhere that people actually listen to me. Um, the problem with Game Pass is that it is going to change how games are made. And Redfall is an example of what Game Pass drives. It is something that's kind of designed to be so completely inoffensive that everybody can pick it up and play it. It's designed to be something that people will play forever. You don't have any creative ideas, because if you have creative ideas, you might put people off the game. So it's very risk averse. And it's just designed to be um, so utterly generic that everybody can play it for however long. That's the problem with the Game Pass model. That's what the game has been made for. And we're going to get more and more of those because that is the only kind of game that Game Pass actually will support. In the same way that all the other subscription services have changed how music is made and how films are made, and it's just an endless churn of content now across pretty much all those sectors. What's been happening to games is probably more dramatic because the way that you need to make these games needs to be so different to make them work on a subscription service. So yeah, that's what people wanted. That's what people are going to get. Enjoy your Redfalls.
Eat your slop.
Yeah,
Eat
enjoy
your
your
slop.
enjoy your Redfalls because that's what you're going to get unlimited amounts of
Yeah.
going forwards.
It's just really sad. It's really sad. And again, this is a point to be excited about indie games because hell yeah, there are so many cool things coming out. I mean, Cult of the Lamb came out this year as well. Cult of the Lamb, fantastic game. Australian made, focused on what it wants to be. Great job.
Did it come out this year? It came
Get
out
in
last
there.
year.
Did it? Oh my god,
Yeah,
am
it
I
was
losing
last year.
track of
There's
my life?
DLC came out this recently.
There's DLC this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are still talking about and playing it because it's a very good game.
It's just a
But yeah,
well-made video game.
it was definitely made last year. It was definitely released last year. But yeah,
August last year.
indies are definitely where you go for stuff because they can still be risked. They can still take risks and they can still be made in
Good.
traditional ways because they don't need the same sized audience and whatever, and they don't really have a play on Game Pass, so they still need to find a way of making sales work. So there are a couple of indies that end up doing all right on Game Pass, but for the most part, that sector can't rely on that, and they know it. So they try and make their money elsewhere. Generally by having a Switch version, I guess, and hoping that people pick it up on the Switch. But yeah, hopefully they
Yeah.
continue on.
They should do. I mean, the amount of stuff that I'm seeing coming out right now out of Steam itself, when you get through all the dumpster garbage, it is exciting and it will be cool. And I mean,
Well, the good thing,
Switch does have consistently bangers on it. So
the great thing, I guess, for indies is all of those kind of Steam Deck style handhelds, all the handhelds that are coming out that are designed to work with Steam and PC gaming. They're all more than adequate for indies. So those handhelds might not be able to do the AAA, Jedi Survivor game to the kind of the highest level of detail that you could with a 4K PC set up with cooling systems and whatever at home. But the Steam Deck will handle indie games just fine. So that's a new the interest that people have in those handhelds gives the indies a new kind of market as such, a new audience to reach out to, people that are playing these kinds of PC games on the go, and that's a good thing. I really like the trend that we're seeing with those handhelds, and I do hope that the indies keep benefiting from those.
I see no reason as to why that market also wouldn't be impacted by an overflow of those sorts of consoles. Like, there's no reason why that would cause any problem, and it's really exciting because it means more people will play weird little indie games about a crocodile, and that's great. It's better than playing Marvel's The Avengers.
Lie
It's better
like
than
crocodile.
playing...
Lyle the crocodile.
No, what's the
Little Gator.
the little croc game?
Little Gator.
Game. Yeah,
It's great.
that's what I'm thinking of. That game is awesome. Love that. He just plays a little gator. It's also not the Lyle crocodile because that movie is awful. I love the part where he goes la 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 la. It's really good.
The little
yeah.
scene at the start of the movie is quite good, where they
Yeah,
meet
he
for the
goes
first
la
time.
la 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 la.
The little baby crocodile singing, and Xavier Bardem. Was Xavier Bardem?
Sure,
Was it Xavier Bardem?
maybe.
The actor, the the
I want
old
to say
guy.
maybe. Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Thinking of him, it is Xavier Bardem, isn't it? The bad guy from Skyfall. Anyway,
Yes.
yeah, he meets him and they do the little dancing thing, and yeah, that's cute. It's a cute start to the film. It just goes belly up once the crocodile's older.
This is a bit of an unrelated topic, but I do wish more video games would have Hugh Grant in them being the slimiest man of all time. I think every game could benefit from more Hugh Grant.
Did you
That's
watch
my
the Dungeons and
solution for
Dragons movie?
AAA.
Did you, Alan?
I may have watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and I may have had a wonderful time.
That's a cracking good movie, that is. I feel
It's
bad because
very
it's
fun.
obviously Brand the movie. Like, I feel bad for enjoying it because, yeah, it's
And also,
definitely,
golly, it was fun.
yeah, it's definitely Brand the movie, but at the same time, I had too much fun to care. So, yeah, I really like that movie. And the Aussie did the theme song.
And Auntie Donna are in the Australian version of it.
Sorry?
They were the corpses. The Australian comedy group Auntie Donna. They were the
Really?
corpses.
Really? Was it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
I did
them.
not know that. That was an Australian comedy group, was it?
Only in the Australian cut, the Auntie Donna boys from Melbourne and Ballarat are
Really?
yeah, they're hugely Australian, mate.
I did not know that. That's great.
Yeah, it's very good. They
Very
weren't
good
in
movie.
the UK cut of that movie. It was heartbreaking. It was
Oh,
very
really?
sad because I was looking out for them. Yeah, because it's different people for different areas.
So it's different
You got
skeletons
really-
for every country.
Yeah, different bones for different folks.
Oh, wow, that's just blowing my mind. They actually made
Yeah, I know.
So they actually made that because that was obviously a skit scene that was all designed just purely for comedy. And they actually
Hmm.
made localized versions of it for each market.
I believe so. Yeah, something like that.
That's neat.
Isn't it great? Yeah, it's a great movie. Go out and see the Dungeons and Dragons movie if you haven't.
Yeah,
Everyone should
definitely do that. But see the
It's very-
Australian version.
Again, it has Hugh Grant being the slimiest man, and I love him.
I was really unsure about that. Like I was really unsure about Hugh Grant in a Dungeons and Dragons movie. I was like, really? No, that can't be right.
No,
But
did you watch the
but
Gentleman?
he
Because
totally
was
got
great
me
in that,
with
like the same character.
he totally got me within 5 minutes on screen. I was like, yeah, this guy rocks. He's
Yeah.
he's having too much
Yeah,
fun
he's
with this movie. Yeah.
He's just having a good time. And with that,
Have you seen the Dungeons and Dragons movie, Trent?
No, I haven't actually.
Wow.
I was,
You uncultured person.
I don't know. It was like, when did it come out? Like last year, the year before?
What?
no, same year. It came out this year.
It's still in cinemas, dude.
Is it?
Yes.
I thought
Yeah.
it was like ages ago. And now we're in that awkward time where it's not in theaters because Guardians of Galaxy is out now.
No.
What?
It's still. Oh, actually, it might have left it because it's actually coming out on iTunes on the same day, I think, as Zelda.
It's
Yeah.
very much worth watching.
So you can,
I think
instead
it's
of
very
watching
fun.
Zelda, instead of playing Zelda, you can watch Dungeons and Dragons on iTunes instead, which I highly recommend. It's
We'll see.
definitely
I
better.
would also recommend it.
I hope they do a
Watch it,
sequel.
Trent. I want because I love Chris Pine. I hate Chris Pratt. Sucked.
Too many Chris's. I know I
Chris
always get them
Pine.
confused as well. Chris
Chris-
Pine's great. Chris Pine, great. Chris Pratt is a Pratt.
Yeah, he's
But yeah,
stinky.
Chris Pine was great.
Yeah. More Chris Pine
And
in
so
video
was
games, thank you.
so is Will Smith's kid. Justice. Justice,
Yeah.
is that his name? Yeah, Justice. He was
He was
great.
very good.
He did a good job.
They're all great.
Nancy
did a
Drew
very good
wasn't
job.
great, but
Yeah, she's fine.
she's yeah. She did enough, I guess. Oh, but Michelle Rodriguez is great. Like,
It's just Michelle fucking Rodriguez. What do you want from her?
yeah,
She's
she
gonna do
was
the one
just
character
being.
she's been doing for the last 70
Yeah.
years.
she was like, I'll do this movie if I can just be myself. And they're like, yeah, sure, you can,
I was
you can
expecting
just
her
be
to make a
yourself.
family, like some sort of family-based joke with Dominic Toretto coming out of the corner and just have Vin Diesel hiding there like a little goblin.
Uh,
And
But that
Bradley
was
Cooper
a-
being a tiny boy as well. Good for him.
that was a movie for her. Like that role was
Yeah.
just that, yeah, designed for her.